So this is Brady Corbet's second movie and I haven't seen the first one, so I really wasn't familiar with him at all. But the few short snippets I'd seen of this looked good. And it's got Natalie Portman in it, so I figured it's probably worth a look. But the interesting thing is that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this movie. And it made less than $1 million at the box office, so it most likely lost a bunch of money too. And after seeing it, I'm kinda wondering why. Because it's actually an extremely well made movie. It's also got a big name attached to it, so that should draw in some people. So maybe people just didn't hear about it, and that's most likely the biggest reason. But I think there might be another reason too. A reason called A Star is Born. Because on the surface they have a lot in common. They're both about a pop star rising to fame. And this coming out when it did was just really bad timing. Had it been released at another time, people might have been a little bit more interested. Because this is definitely not a movie that's gonna be able to compete for an audience with a movie like A Star is Born. This was never gonna be a mainstream hit either. And honestly, it's aimed at a very different audience too. But I think it deserves a lot more attention than it's gotten. Because as I said, it's extremely well made. And sort of interesting and intriguing too. But it's also got Natalie Portman doing something very different. This is not a role I'm used to seeing her in. She's actually pushing herself a bit in this one. But let's back up a bit, because she's actually only in the second half of the movie. The story starts back in 1999. When her character was like 14 or something. And she's a young girl who through some unexpected circumstances becomes a pop star. And the first half of the movie basically follows her through those first couple of years. Then it jumps to 2017 when she's, well, almost 20 years older. And I guess the movie is really about modern day celebrity. And how a life in the spotlight can change a person. Which it definitely has for this character. But there's also some interesting parallels the movie draws between celebrity and terrorism. And I'm not entirely sure what the point it was trying to make was. Well, there was one point it did make that I thought was actually pretty interesting. But I'm not sure if that's all it was trying to say. Because there's a pretty heavy focus on the terrorist element here. Which I guess leads me to the fact that this movie did not turn out to be anything like I'd imagined. And that became clear almost immediately. From the very first sequence. Well, first there's some narration by Willem Dafoe, and there's more of that throughout the movie too. But the first real sequence was kind of shocking and disturbing, to be honest. A couple of words I did not expect to use when describing this movie. And I don't want to give anything away, because part of what made it so effective was that I didn't expect it. But let's just say there's a horrific event. Which then inadvertently leads to the main character's rise to success. But the other thing that makes it so effective is the way it's shot. This thing is beautifully shot and directed. Brady Corbet's got talent. And the sound design and score just complement the visuals perfectly. So on a technical level, this thing is really great. I loved it. Now what I didn't love was the story itself. Because, well, I just wasn't sure what the point was. And the arc the character went through wasn't exactly all that interesting. And in most movies the character ends up in a better place than where they started, even if things go down the toilet. They usually learn a thing or two, and become better for it. But I don't think that's really the case here. If anything, it seems like she's deteriorated. Compare the adult her to the kid, and the kid actually acts more grown up. And I guess that's sort of the point, to show how celebrity can ruin people. How it can infantilize them even. But they didn't really show the deterioration. They didn't show the journey. They basically just showed the beginning and the end. And I'm not sure what the lesson here is, or what I'm supposed to take away from it, but it didn't feel very satisfying. And that's my only real issue with the movie, because I really liked the rest of it. I liked the dialogue, I liked the characters, I loved the narration, I loved the way it was shot and put together. I love the performances. Speaking of which, Jude Law's in this, and he's pretty great. He plays the manager, and he's also in a very different role than usual. Not that there's a usual Jude Law role, but I definitely haven't seen him do this before. Oh, and I loved the one song near the beginning of the movie too. It's just a beautiful song and a great performance. And all the circumstance around it just made it even better. So yeah, I think there's a lot more to like about this movie than not. And I think it deserves more attention. But yeah, it's got some issues too. Mainly that I'm just not sure what I was supposed to take away from it. There's a lot of stuff in this movie. It's actually very dense if you start to unpack it. And I could go on and on about this one, but I've yammered on for long enough. So would I recommend it? Yeah, it's a very complex and layered movie. So check it out. Or don't. But you really should. However, I'm still not your dad. But I am trying to sell out, so consider liking, subbing, hitting that bell, and supporting me on Patreon. Because I really need to hire some backup dancers. And hey, why not drop a comment below or check out another review? I'd appreciate it. Thanks.